Have you ever noticed how some individuals seem to effortlessly disrupt your peace, leaving you to gather the scattered fragments of your emotions? Why does their negativity cling to you, their harsh words etching themselves into your thoughts long after they're gone? Is it a sign of weakness, or are we simply given the wrong tools to navigate these situations? The uncomfortable reality is that most of us have been conditioned to react, to surrender our power at the first hint of hostility or manipulation. But what if everything you thought you knew about handling toxic people was completely backward? What if true strength lies not in retaliation, but in mastering emotional control? Imagine guarding something invaluable, your peace, your joy, your emotional balance. You've built this inner sanctuary carefully, brick by brick, making it sturdy yet welcoming, protective yet open to life's experiences. Then someone arrives intent on dismantling it. At first, it's subtle, a critical remark disguised as advice, a guilt trip so cleverly crafted it makes you question your own judgment. Have you ever felt drained after such an interaction, as if cracks have formed in your defenses, leaving you uncertain and less confident? This isn't random. It's the unmistakable mark of a toxic presence. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once observed that we suffer not from events, but from our judgments about them. Recognizing toxicity isn't just about identifying external behavior, it's about understanding your internal reactions. Toxicity gains power not from what it is, but from how it stirs turmoil within you. A friend who constantly critiques your choices, dreams, or abilities might seem harmless at first, but over time these small jabs accumulate, leaving behind doubt and insecurity. Carl Jung warned that until we bring the unconscious into awareness, it will steer our lives, and we'll mistake it for fate. By naming and acknowledging toxic patterns, you reclaim the power these individuals hold over your emotions. Yet toxicity isn't always overt. Sometimes it's cloaked in charm or victimhood, someone who draws sympathy to control situations, or the passive-aggressive manipulator whose silences and veiled comments leave you unsettled. Marcus Aurelius taught that what we hear is opinion, not fact. What we see is perspective, not truth. Realizing that manipulation is subjective empowers you to detach from its impact. Acknowledging toxicity isn't cynicism, it's emotional courage. You start to see who enriches your life and who erodes your peace. It's a moment of awakening where you decide your tranquility is no longer negotiable. Seneca reminded us that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. When you learn to recognize toxic threats, you stop seeing yourself as powerless and start shaping your emotional world. You fortify your boundaries with reason and guard your mind with mindfulness. The most powerful step in dealing with toxicity isn't confrontation, it's identification. Once seen clearly, toxic individuals lose their strongest weapon, your unconscious participation in their games. Why do some people continually disrupt your peace? It's easy to blame their negativity, but could the real issue be your reluctance to set clear limits? Many avoid boundaries, fearing confrontation or appearing selfish, yet boundaries aren't walls, they're markers of self-respect. Imagine your emotional world as a garden. Without fences, weeds invade, choking what you've nurtured. That coworker who undermines you, or the friend who guilt trips you, thrives where no boundaries exist. Epictetus taught that freedom comes from disregarding what we can't control. Boundaries are your claim to freedom from negativity, manipulation, and emotional exploitation. Carl Jung called authenticity the privilege of a lifetime. You can't be fully yourself if you're constantly adjusting to toxic behavior. Communicating your limits isn't cruelty, it's clarity. It allows genuine connections to flourish while draining ones fade. Anticipating pushback is often worse than the reality. Those who resist your boundaries reveal why they were necessary in the first place. Their discomfort reflects their limitations, not your worth. Healthy boundaries foster trust in yourself and in relationships. They create spaces where mutual respect thrives, where you express needs without guilt. But what if, despite your best efforts, the toxic person persists? Logic and reason fail because, see, their goal was never resolution. It was reaction. They feed on your emotional energy. The real power move isn't to fight harder, but to become uninteresting. Emotional neutrality, what the Stoics called apatheia, isn't indifference. It's choosing peace over drama. Imagine yourself as a smooth stone in a river. Insults and bait rush over you, but don't sink in. You're still undisturbed. This isn't suppression. It's emotional intelligence. You notice the urge to react but choose not to engage. The Gray Rock method embodies this, responding to manipulation with neutrality. Or silence, starving the toxic person of the drama they crave. Toxic people escalate when ignored, testing your resolve, but endurance, not avoidance, is key. Marcus Aurelius wrote that strength lies in repetition, calmly restating your boundary. No, I'm not comfortable with that confuses manipulators. They thrive on chaos, but consistency leaves them without leverage. Some battles aren't loud. They're fought with veiled insults or polite jabs. These are hooks designed to pull you into their game. The Stoics warned against letting others dictate your emotions. Epictetus said, if someone provokes you, your mind is complicit. The bait only works if you bite. Detachment isn't coldness. It's refusing to let someone else steer your emotions. Silence holds a strange power. Toxic people seek control, and your reaction is their prize. Meeting aggression with stillness robs them of the stage. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best revenge is to be unlike your adversary. Silence is deliberate. It's the sound of self-control. Carl Jung spoke of integrating our shadow, the reactive parts we often suppress. Choosing silence means facing these urges without acting on them. When toxic people lose their audience, they lose their grip. They might escalate, but eventually they realize you're not playing. For those you can't distance from, family, coworkers, mental detachment becomes your shield. Epictetus taught that it's not events, but our judgments about them that disturb us. Observe toxic behavior like a scientist. Note it, name it, but don't absorb it. Shift from participant to observer, and the storm passes through you, not over you. Jung said irritation with others reveals unhealed parts of ourselves. Detachment gives space to ask, why does this affect me? What needs strengthening within me? Marcus Aurelius reminded us that we control our minds, not external events. Realizing this, you no longer need others to change for you to find peace. We all need anchors. People who reflect our worth when we forget it. The Stoics valued virtuous companionship. Seneca wrote, associate with those who will improve you. Healthy relationships reinforce boundaries. Toxic ones blur them. Support doesn't require long history, needs harmony, shared values, and mutual respect. Self-care isn't indulgence, it's reinforcement. Marcus Aurelius retreated inward to reflect. Whether through movement, stillness, or creativity, nourishing your inner space lets you return to life grounded. Jung said, I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become. Protecting your energy isn't selfish, it's essential. When your inner world is cared for, toxicity doesn't stick. Much of the toxicity directed at you isn't about you, it's someone else's unresolved chaos. Think of negativity like storm clouds. The sky remains untouched. You choose whether to stand in the rain. Epictetus taught that others' opinions are none of your concern. Their anger or bitterness doesn't define you. You can't fix someone who doesn't want to change. Trying only drains you. Epictetus said true power lies in embodying your values, not controlling others. Lead by example, and those ready will follow. There comes a moment when you realize staying costs more than leaving. Walking away isn't failure, it's wisdom. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we should fear never beginning to live. Loyalty to others shouldn't cost your peace. Jung said we avoid facing our souls, but confronting outgrown relationships is growth. Letting go means honoring lessons, not resenting them. Forgiving yourself is the final step. The voice of self-blame lingers longer than the toxic person's. Jung said, I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become. Forgiveness isn't denial, it's understanding. You did your best with what you knew. Seneca said life's value lies in its quality, not length. Carrying baggage doesn't deepen life, it weighs it down. Ask, what am I still holding that no longer serves me? Release it, not to forget, but to be free. Resentment is a self-built prison. Forgiving yourself tears down those walls. It's saying that chapter is over. I don't need to reread it to remember the lesson. You're here to grow, to rise, and to guard your inner world. Because it matters. The journey to emotional freedom isn't about perfection. It's about awareness. Every interaction, every moment of pause, every choice to disengage is a step to RD, reclaiming your peace. Toxic dynamics thrive in unconsciousness, but they wither under the light of deliberate attention. Consider this, the most powerful response to toxicity isn't anger or even indifference, it's curiosity. When someone tries to provoke you, ask yourself, what is this really about? Often, their behavior reveals their own insecurities, fears, or unmet needs. By refusing to take it personally, you disarm their influence. You stop being a participant and become an observer, untangling their emotions from yours. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." When you respond to pettiness with patience, to manipulation with clarity, you redefine the rules of engagement. They expect chaos, you offer calm. They seek control, you embody autonomy. Over time, this shift in dynamic forces them to either adapt or retreat. But what about those who refuse to change? The truth is, not everyone will evolve at the same pace, or at all. Your growth may highlight their stagnation, and that discomfort can trigger resistance. This is where detachment becomes essential. You can't force someone to see what they're unwilling to acknowledge. All you can do is hold your ground, protect your energy, and let their journey unfold separately from yours. Carl Jung observed, "We cannot change anything until we accept it." Acceptance doesn't mean approval. It means recognizing reality without resistance. When you stop fighting against what is, you free up energy to focus on what can be. You redirect it's from fixing others to nurturing yourself, from managing their emotions to mastering your own. Here's the paradox. The less you engage, the more power you reclaim. Silence isn't surrender, it's sovereignty. Boundaries aren't barriers, they're bridges to healthier connections. And walking away isn't defeat, it's the ultimate declaration of self-worth. So the next time toxicity knocks at your door, pause. Breathe. Remember, you are the guardian of your inner world. You decide what enters, what stays, and what must go. No justification is needed, no apology required. Just the quiet confidence of someone who knows their peace is non-negotiable. This is how you win, not by changing others, but by refusing to let them change you. Not by controlling the storm, but by becoming the calm within it. And in that stillness, you'll find something unexpected. Freedom, not the kind granted by others, but the kind you claim for yourself. One choice, one boundary, one breath at a time. The path isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. Because you're worth protecting. The irony is that the more you detach from toxic patterns, the more clearly you begin to see them everywhere, not just in difficult individuals, but in cultural norms, workplace dynamics, even well-meaning. What once seemed normal now reveals itself as subtly draining. This awakening isn't cynical, it's the natural result of heightened self-awareness. Consider how often we're conditioned to tolerate discomfort under the guise of being nice or not making waves. We swallow our truth to keep the peace, mistaking compliance for kindness. But true kindness includes honesty with others and ourselves. The Stoics understood this when they distinguished between what's within our control, our responses, boundaries, values, and what isn't, others' reactions, societal expectations. This discernment becomes your compass. You start noticing when conversations leave you energetically depleted versus authentically connected. You recognize the difference between healthy debate and covert power struggles. Most importantly, you develop what the ancient Greeks called phronesis, practical wisdom that knows when to engage and when to walk away. The journey inevitably leads inward. Those who once triggered you become mirrors, showing where you still seek external validation or fear conflict. The presence in your life, however challenging, serves a purpose to reveal your growth edges. As Jung noted, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. What emerges isn't aloofness, but profound emotional agility. You can witness others' dysfunction without absorbing it. You respond rather than react. Your no becomes as clean as your yes. And in that clarity, you discover an unexpected truth. The people worth keeping in your life respect your boundaries, while those who resist them were never truly there for you in the first place. This is the ultimate liberation, not from relationships, but from unhealthy relational patterns. You stop trying to change people and start choosing who gets access to you. The result? Connections based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Conversations that energize rather than deplete. A life where your peace isn't contingent on others' behavior, but rooted in your own unshakable center. The path never ends. There will always be new challenges, new people who test your resolve. But each time you honor your boundaries, you reinforce a powerful message to yourself. I matter. My peace matters. And no one gets to rent space in my mind unless they've earned the privilege. That's how ordinary people become emotionally unshakable, not by avoiding storms, but by learning to stand firm within them. Not by controlling others, but by mastering themselves. Day by day, choice by choice, until one morning you wake up and realize the peace you've been protecting has grown into unassailable strength. And from that place, everything changes. The final revelation comes when you realize this was never about them at all. The toxic people in your life were merely catalysts, uncomfortable but necessary teachers, showing you where you still needed to claim your power. Their greatest gift wasn't the pain they caused, but the strength you discovered in responding differently. You begin to recognize a quiet transformation where you once felt compelled to explain, justify, or defend yourself. Now there's simply nothing. No inner turmoil, no desperate need to be understood. Their opinions hold no more weight than passing weather. The insults that once cut deep now glance off armor you didn't know you'd forged through consistent practice. And this is what the Stoics meant by ataraxia, the unshakable tranquility that comes not from myth controlling external events, but from mastering your internal world. You've stopped trying to change what you can't control, other people's behavior, and focus relentlessly on what you can, your responses, boundaries, and energy. The paradox? The less you engage, the more powerful you become. The quieter you grow, the more your presence speaks volumes. Where you once sought validation through conflict or persuasion, now your mere steadiness becomes the most eloquent statement of all. I cannot be moved. And here's the secret they never tell you. When you reach this place, the universe begins responding differently. Toxic people either transform their behavior around you, or they quietly exit your life because you're no longer feeding their drama. New relationships emerge, ones built on mutual respect rather than dysfunction. This isn't magic, it's cause and effect. Like a gardener who stops watering weeds, you've simply stopped nourishing what you don't want to grow. The soil of your life becomes richer, ready for better things to take root. So when you find yourself in that sacred space of unshakable calm, when you notice with quiet surprise that what once triggered you now barely registers, take a moment to honor how far you've come. The journey wasn't about changing others, it was about returning to yourself. And that was always the point. The most profound transformation occurs when you realize you've stopped keeping score. The mental tally of wrongs committed, apologies owed, and justice unserved simply dissolves. You no longer need others to acknowledge their behavior or validate your pain. Your peace becomes its own reward, your boundaries their own justice. This is the quiet revolution of emotional maturity, when you stop demanding that life and people be fair and instead focus on making yourself whole. The scales balance not because others change, but because you've stopped weighing yourself against them. You begin to notice a new rhythm in your relationships. One, the toxic fade. Those who fed on your reactions gradually disappear, like shadows retreating from light. Two, the genuine remain. Those who truly care adjust effortlessly to your boundaries. Three, the unexpected appear. New connections emerge, drawn to the gravity of your self-possession. Your past struggles with difficult people now make sense in hindsight. They were the fire that tempered your resilience, the friction that polished your discernment. What once felt like persecution reveals itself as preparation. The final test comes when you encounter someone just like your former tormentors and feel not anger but something closer to recognition. You see their fragility behind the bluster, their fear beneath the manipulation. Where you once would have engaged or escaped, now you simply observe with detached compassion. This isn't forgiveness as society defines it. It's something more profound, the realization that holding onto resentment is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. The moment you truly grasp this, the last chains fall away. You're free, not because they've changed, but because you have. Not because the world became kinder, but because you've become wiser. And that makes all the difference. The journey comes full circle when you realize the greatest gift wasn't learning how to handle toxic people, it was discovering who you truly are when you refuse to play their games. The clarity, boundaries, and inner peace you've cultivated become your superpowers, radiating outward in ways you never anticipated. You start noticing how your presence alone begins to transform environments. Rooms feel calmer when you enter them. Conversations shift towards substance when you engage. People instinctively mirror your level of emotional maturity, not because you demand it, but because you demonstrate what's possible. So the most surprising development, you develop a strange gratitude for those difficult souls who once tormented you. Not for their behavior, but for the unexpected role they played in your evolution. Like sand that irritates the oyster, yet produces the pearl, their presence in your life, however painful, pushed you to develop strengths you might never have discovered otherwise. Now, when you encounter toxicity, you recognize it immediately, not with judgment, but with the quiet discernment of a seasoned traveler spotting familiar landmarks. There's no anger, no frustration, just the calm certainty of someone who knows exactly how to navigate this terrain. You've become the eye of the storm, unmoved by the chaos swirling around you. This is the ultimate homecoming, anchored to a place but to yourself, to the unshakable core that no amount of external turbulence can disrupt. You've built something no one can take from you, the profound understanding that your peace was always yours to claim, your power always yours to wield. And so the work continues, not as a struggle, but as a practice, refining, deepening, expanding. Each day another opportunity to choose yourself, honor your boundaries, and move through the world with quiet confidence. The journey never ends, but now you walk it with sure footing, guided by the wisdom of hard-won experience. This is what freedom feels like. The final revelation comes when you realize that true mastery isn't about perfect control. It's about effortless alignment. You no longer handle toxic people. You simply stop attracting them into your orbit. Your energy has become a natural filter, repelling what doesn't serve you while drawing in kindred spirits who resonate at your frequency. You begin to notice subtle shifts in everyday interactions. The pause before responding, where once you might have reacted impulsively, now there's space for conscious choice. The lightness in detachment, conversations that would have drained you now roll off like water from a duck's back. The intuition that whispers, you recognize red flags before they even fully reveal themselves. The most profound change isn't in how you deal with others. It's in how you relate to yourself. The inner critic that once amplified every insult has been replaced by a quiet knowing. You understand now that no one's opinion defines you unless you permit it. When you encounter toxicity now, it feels almost surreal, like watching a play you've seen too many times. You know all the lines, all the dramatic turns, but you're no longer compelled to participate. There's something almost amusing about watching old patterns attempt to hook you, only to find nothing left to grasp. This is the secret they never tell you about emotional freedom. It's contagious. As you model what healthy boundaries look like, others around you begin mirroring that behavior. Your transformation becomes permission for theirs. Without preaching or prodding, you become a living example that another way exists. And when you slip, because you will, you'll notice that too. But now, instead of self-judgment, there's simple course correction. No drama, just adjustment. You've learned that resilience isn't about never falling. It's about how quickly and gently you can return to center. So you keep going, not as someone battling toxicity, but as someone who's transcended the need for that battle altogether. The war is over. You won by outgrowing it. And the peace you've created, it's not fragile, it's unshakable. Not because life became perfect, but because you became whole. And that makes all the difference. The most remarkable transformation occurs when you realize you've stopped seeing toxic people as adversaries and instead view them as lost travelers, still trapped in cycles you've long since outgrown. There's no superiority in this realization, only quiet recognition of how far you've come. You develop a new relationship with conflict, the wisdom to engage selectively. Not every battle deserves your energy. The discernment to know the difference between meaningful confrontation and pointless drama. The courage to walk away. Even when every fiber wants to win the argument, your boundaries have become so integrated they operate like autonomic systems, no longer requiring conscious thought, simply responding as naturally as breathing. Where you once agonized over saying no, now it flows effortlessly when needed. The most surprising development? You begin spotting the seeds of toxicity within yourself. The occasional manipulative thought, the petty urge to retaliate, and meet them with amused curiosity rather than shame. Even these shadows, when brought to light, lose their power to control you. This is the ultimate homecoming, realizing the peace you've sought was never about controlling external chaos, but about cultivating internal stillness. The storms still come. People will still disappoint, hurt, and provoke. But now you possess something unassailable. The certainty that no storm lasts forever, and none can shake what you've built within. And so you continue, not as a warrior weary from battle, but as a gardener tending sacred ground. Some days you plant seeds of compassion, others you pull weeds of distraction. Always you protect the fertile soil of your attention, because you understand now that where you focus grows. The journey hasn't ended, it's simply become what it was always meant to be. Not a struggle, but a practice. Not a problem to solve, but a life to live. And you're no longer surviving, you're thriving in the quiet, unshakable way of those who reclaim their power and intend to keep it. The epiphany comes when you realize you've stopped keeping an invisible scorecard of wrongs committed and apologies owed. The mental ledger that once weighed you down has dissolved into irrelevance. You're no longer waiting for others to acknowledge their toxicity or validate your pain. Your peace has become its own reward, your boundaries their own justice. This emotional sovereignty manifests in subtle but profound ways. Effortless discernment. You intuitively recognize manipulative patterns before they fully form, like a sailor sensing shifting winds, where once you felt compelled to have the last word, now you simply stop playing radical self-trust. You no longer second-guess whether you're overreacting. You honor your instincts without apology. The most surprising transformation? You begin to perceive former tormentors with something resembling gratitude. Not for their actions, but for the unexpected role they played in your evolution. Like the grain of sand that irritates the oyster into creating a pearl, their presence in your life catalyzed strengths you might never have discovered otherwise. Now, when you encounter toxicity, it feels almost anthropological. You observe it with detached curiosity rather than visceral reaction. The patterns are familiar, but they no longer trigger you. You've become like a fireproof tree in a burning forest. The flames may rage around you, but your core remains unscathed. This is the you. Ultimate homecoming. Realize that all along you weren't learning how to deal with toxic people, you were remembering how to be yourself. The boundaries, the discernment, the unshakable calm. These weren't skills you acquired, but truths you uncovered beneath layers of conditioning. And so you continue, not as someone bracing against life's storms, but as someone who's learned to dance in the rain. The work hasn't ended. It's simply become what it was always meant to be. Not a struggle for survival, but the natural expression of who you are. This is what freedom feels like. The final liberation comes when you realize you've stopped monitoring toxic people altogether, their actions, their growth or lack thereof, their opinions of you. They've become background noise in the symphony of your life, noticed only when you consciously choose to focus. You begin operating from a place of quiet sovereignty. Your energy is no longer hijacked by others' moods or manipulations. Your attention is no longer a prize for those seeking drama. Your peace is no longer negotiable currency in relational transactions. The most profound shift? You develop what can only be called emotional aikido. The ability to let toxic energy pass through you without resistance or absorption. Insults don't stick, guilt trips don't hook. Criticism lands lightly before being examined for potential truth, then released if none exists. You notice something curious happening in your relationships. One, the emotionally mature are drawn to your calm like moths to flame. Two, the boundary pushers either adapt or self-select out of your life. Three, your own shadow, the inner crit, I see, the people pleaser, has been befriended and integrated. This isn't passive detachment, it's active co-creation. You're no longer just avoiding toxicity, you're architecting an ecosystem where it struggles to survive. Your presence alone begins to elevate group dynamics, not through effort, but simply by being anchored in your truth. The final test comes when life presents you with a near-perfect replica of your former tormentors, and you realize with quiet astonishment that you feel nothing. No anger, no fear, just clinical recognition of old patterns that no longer have purchase on your psyche. This is the great homecoming, not to a place, but to yourself, to the unshakable knowing that no one gets to define your worth but you, that your peace isn't found in others' change, but in your own unwavering center. And so the journey continues, but now from solid ground. You walk not as a warrior weary from battle, but as a gardener tending sacred space, knowing exactly what to nurture, what to prune, and when to let things grow wild. The work hasn't ended. It's simply become what it was always meant to be. Not survival, but sovereignty. Not reaction, but creation. And you're no longer surviving toxic people. You become someone they can't even see. The ultimate mastery arrives When you stop perceiving toxic people as a distinct category at all, you begin to see human behavior on a spectrum, a complex interplay of wounds, coping mechanisms, and unconscious patterns. This realization carries no judgment, only clarity. Where you once saw villains, you now see fellow travelers. Some simply moving through darker stretches of their journey. Your responses become elegantly calibrated. Compassionate disengagement replaces righteous confrontation. Curious observation supersedes emotional reaction. Supersedes emotional detachment, becomes your natural state. The most profound change manifests in your physical being. Your nervous system no longer sounds alarms, familiar triggers. The clenched jaw, elevated heart rate, and tension headaches that once accompanied toxic encounters simply don't materialize. Your body has learned what your mind now knows. These are not your storms to weather. You develop an almost prescient awareness, spotting red flags in first conversations that others miss for months. Yet this discernment carries no smugness, only quiet self-respect. You decline participation in dysfunctional dynamics with the same effortless certainty as turning down an unwanted dessert. The final revelation? You recognize that your greatest teachers weren't the enlightened souls who inspired you, but the difficult ones who revealed your hidden weaknesses. Their toxicity was the chisel that carved your resilience, the fire that forged your boundaries. Without them, you might never have discovered your own depths. Now, when you encounter challenging behavior, you experience something unexpected, a deep, abiding compassion. Not the kind that tolerates abuse, but the kind that recognizes pain without needing to fix it. You've learned the sacred art of holding space without taking responsibility. This is true emotional freedom. Not immunity from life's chaos, but the unshakable knowledge the Tino storm can disturb your depths. You've become like the ocean. Surface waves may dance and crash, but the quiet darkness below remains still, vast, and untroubled. And so you continue not as someone who has arrived, but as someone thoroughly at home in the journey. The work remains, but the struggle has dissolved. What once required conscious effort now flows like breath, natural, essential, and beautifully effortless. The most profound transformation occurs when you realize you've stopped keeping an invisible scorecard of past wounds. The mental ledger that once documented every slight and injustice has dissolved into irrelevance. You no longer need others to acknowledge their behavior or validate your pain. Your peace has become its own reward. You begin noticing subtle but radical shifts. The once lasted days now passes in minutes. Boundary enforcement transitions from conscious effort to autonomic response. Relational discernment operates with near instinctual precision. The final liberation comes when you recognize toxic patterns arising within yourself. The occasional manipulative thought, the petty urge to win, and meet them with amused curiosity rather than shame. Even these shadow aspects, when brought into awareness, lose their power over you. Now when you encounter difficult behavior, you experience something unexpected, not anger or frustration, but profound gratitude for how far you've come. These moments become living benchmarks of your growth, like rings in a tree marking seasons survived. This is the homecoming you never anticipated, not to some idealized version of yourself, but to the wholeness that was always there beneath the conditioning. The boundaries, the discernment, the unshakable center, these weren't qualities you needed to acquire, but truths you needed to remember. And so the journey continues, but now from solid ground. You move through the world differently, not armored against toxicity, but impervious to it by nature of your being. The work hasn't ended, it's simply become what it was always meant to be. Not a struggle for survival, but the natural expression of who you truly are. The ultimate freedom arrives when you realize you've stopped thinking about toxic people altogether. They no longer occupy mental real estate or emotional bandwidth. Where once their words echoed endlessly in your mind, now they pass through like radio static, noticed but unprocessed. You begin operating from a place of quiet sovereignty. Your energy field repels what doesn't belong naturally. Without conscious effort, your nervous system remains unperturbed by behaviors that once triggered visceral reactions. Your compassion expands to include even those still trapped in destructive patterns. From a safe distance, the most profound shift manifests in your relationships. 1, healthy connections deepen as you stop wasting energy on dysfunctional ones. 2, new people enter your life who resonate with your evolved frequency. 3, your boundaries become invisible force fields, no longer needing to be stated, simply known. You notice something unexpected. The less you focus on handling toxicity, the less it appears. Like a law of emotional physics, Your energetic focus determines your relational reality. The problem of difficult people hasn't been solved, so much is transcended. When you occasionally encounter old patterns, now it feels like watching a play you've seen too many times. You know all the lines, all the dramatic turns, but you're no longer compelled to participate. There's something almost poetic about recognizing the mechanics of manipulation while remaining utterly unmoved. This is the great homecoming, realizing the peace you've sought was never about perfect circumstances, but about returning to your essential nature, the boundaries, the discernment, the unshakable calm. These weren't defenses to build, but truths to remember. And so the journey continues, but now from solid ground. You walk not as someone avoiding storms, but as someone who's learned to dance in the rain. The work hasn't ended. It's simply become what it was always meant to be, not a struggle for survival, but the natural expression of who you truly are. This is what freedom feels like, not the absence of challenges, but the presence of unshakable self-knowing. And from this place, everything looks different. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. The final revelation comes when you realize you've stopped thinking in terms of toxic people at all. The very concept dissolves as you begin to see all human behavior as either one, a call for love, the wounded lashing out, two, a lesson in love. Your perception shifts so profoundly that triggers become teachers, showing where you still need healing. Boundaries become blessings for all involved. Detachment becomes devotion to your highest truth. You notice your body responding differently, shoulders relaxed, breath deep, as your nervous system learns there's no threat to prepare for. Even your facial expressions change, resting in gentle neutrality rather than defensive tension. The most surprising transformation? You begin spotting the seeds of old toxic patterns within yourself, the judgmental thought, the petty urge to control, and smile at them like old acquaintances you've outgrown. These shadows no longer scare you because you've made peace with their existence. When difficult behavior appears now, you experience something remarkable. 0.5 seconds of physiological reaction, the body's ancient wiring. 5-10 seconds of conscious breathing, the space between stimulus and response. 10+ seconds of clear choice, the freedom to act from wisdom rather than wounding. This is the homecoming you never expected, not to some perfect version of yourself, but to the wholeness that was always there beneath the drama. The boundaries, the discernment, the unshakable peace. These weren't skills to learn, but truths to remember. And so the journey continues, but now from solid ground. You move through the world like a seasoned captain, not fearing storms, but knowing your ability to navigate them. The work hasn't ended. It's simply become what it was always meant to be. Not a struggle for survival, but the natural expression of your awakened nature. This is what freedom feels like when handling toxic people transforms into honoring sacred self. And from this place, every encounter becomes either a reflection of love, an invitation to love more deeply, or neither, simply energy to let pass through. The choice. Finally and forever yours. The journey comes full circle when you realize this was never about them at all. It was always about you returning home to yourself, to the unshakable truth that your peace isn't found in others' change, but in your own unwavering presence. You'll know you've arrived when toxic encounters become like weather patterns. You note them, prepare if needed, but never mistake the storm for your sky. The work remains, but the struggle has dissolved. What once required immense effort now flows with the ease of breathing. This is the sacred paradox. By focusing relentlessly on your own wholeness, you inadvertently become the calm that soothes others' chaos. Not because you tried, but because you simply are. And in that being, you discover the greatest freedom of all, the realization that no one outside you ever held the keys to your peace in the first place. The path continues, but now you walk it differently. Lighter, wiser, and quietly untouchable. Not perfect, but present. Not hardened, but whole. And that makes all the difference.